House Democrats have officially moved forward with a rule change which would allow remote voting by proxy. Now, this is something which has been urged on and supported by both Republicans and Democrats in the House, saying, look, this is something that we need. You can see here House Resolution 965, authorizing remote voting by proxy in the House of Representatives and for providing for official remote committee proceedings during a public health emergency due to the novel coronavirus and for other purposes. Wow. They're terrible at making titles over there. But one very important thing that you need to know, one very important thing that you need to understand about this is that this is remote voting by proxy, which is distinct and different from just remote voting as such. So in remote voting by proxy, one lawmaker does have to go down there and can represent other lawmakers. You can see here in this article, just sort of talking about it here, you can see here, under the Democratic rule change, a lawmaker could serve as a designated proxy for only up to 10 members, and that lawmaker must follow exact and written instructions on how their colleague wants to vote, from all the way from individual amendments all the way down to final passage, and that these rule changes were those precautions were built in to address GOP concerns that lawmakers voting by proxy for other members could vote any way that they wanted. And look, obviously that's something that you want. You don't want one lawmaker going in there voting by proxy and then voting for other people and then, sort of changing around other people's vote. That's obviously not something that you want. So, definitely, sure, yeah, that's obviously something that you want. Now, something that you do need to understand when it comes to this rule change, and the reason why it has been resisted for a very long time. We saw this remote voting debate rise, sort of flare up in April, and even, by the way, in sort of late March, people were already talking about this, saying that this was going to be something that was going to be, that was going to be necessary, and Nancy Pelosi was pressing against it. And the reason, quite simply, the reason obviously, and honestly, the reason that they had more or less admitted to, was that, look, if we allow remote voting, then there's less of an ability to kind of, pressure members, do that kind of wheeling and dealing typical politics that you can do when every member has to be there when they want to vote. So, sort of leadership was a bit worried that they might sort of lose control of some of the members if they end up doing remote voting. And very likely that is going to be something that's going to happen, and probably is part of the reason why they moved it to remote voting by proxy as opposed to just, general remote voting and, allowing people to, sort of vote from home. So it is going to be an interesting thing that we're going to have to follow, have to see how this really sort of changes the debates and changes the dynamics. We are already seeing significantly more Democrats voting against Nancy Pelosi's $3 trillion HEROES Act. We've seen, I think, something like 14. We're starting to see a number. As of recording, they haven't done the vote yet. I think by the time this video is up, they'll already have the vote there. So you guys might have more information than me at this time of recording. But I've seen from reports that I'm seeing, a number of moderate Democrats are already saying that they're likely not going to be voting for this thing. So that's an interesting dynamic that we're seeing. I think we're already starting to see effects of this remote voting thing, being done into place, because what we saw was from Jim Clyburn coming out and saying that they did think that this rule change was going to happen before they passed the HEROES Act. So as of recording, they have just passed the rule change, but have not yet voted on the HEROES Act. So there were a number of lawmakers, planning on doing remote voting, even though the remote voting rule change hadn't actually occurred yet. So I'm sort of curious, looking, when I see the final stuff, I'm super, super curious to see how this rule change affected people's votes, because it does seem like leadership is already kind of losing a little bit of their grip on everyday members. So we're going to have to see how that thing plays out. That's going to be something that we're going to want to follow up on as this thing moves forward. So anyway, just wanted to update you guys on that. If you like this video, I'd appreciate it if you hit the like button and consider subscribing. Thanks.